Shirley Jackson's The Lottery. You probably remember this one from school, right? It's famous for that absolutely brutal, shocking ending. But here's a thought. What if that ending wasn't really the point? What if the real horror was hiding in plain sight the whole time? And all the polite chatter and the neighborly smiles? Jackson herself basically tells us this. This story isn't some trick with the twist ending, it's a mirror. Her whole goal was to hold up a mirror and show us, the readers, what we were willing to go along with, right there with the villagers, page after page. It's not really an exploration of violence, it's an exploration of quiet and kind of terrifying agreement. And yeah, that's the big question for us, isn't it? What exactly were the villagers, and by extension, what were we, just calmly accepting before a single stone was even thrown? So let's do it. Let's peel back the layers on this psychological autopsy of a community. So where do we start this autopsy? Well, we've got to begin with the first and honestly the most powerful force in the story, the sheer unstoppable momentum of tradition, especially a tradition that has completely forgotten why it even exists. The literary critic Ruth Franklin, she wrote this amazing biography of Shirley Jackson. She absolutely nails this. The lottery doesn't need people to believe in it to work. It just needs them to repeat it. The villagers aren't holding on to some sacred myth or a deep belief. Nope. They're just holding on to a habit. It's just what's done every year like clockwork. Its power comes from being familiar, not from having any meaning. And this slide right here really gets to the core of it. Look at the difference. A belief, that needs a reason, a story, a why. But a habit just needs a procedure, a how. So the villagers aren't protecting some grand idea. They're protecting this simple, comfortable rhythm of a routine they've known their whole lives. And here's where it gets really kind of uncomfortably human, right? The tradition does something incredibly convenient. It takes responsibility off the table. No single person has to make a hard, agonizing choice. All they have to do is show up and participate. The ritual just washes away that lonely, heavy burden of using your own conscience. So you have this blind obedience to tradition. And that leads us to the next layer of this whole thing, the chilling way a community can take an act of unbelievable violence and make it feel normal, procedural, almost like paperwork. I mean, that's the mechanical puzzle of the story, isn't it? How do you get a whole town of regular people who are otherwise perfectly normal, to take part in a ritual killing without even blinking? Well, the answer is all in the mechanics of doing it together. And this breaks it down perfectly. It's a process of moral diffusion. There's a scholar, Bernice M. Murphy, who's an expert on this kind of literature, and she explains that violence just feels lighter when you share the load. When everyone, from old Mr. Warner down to the little kids, picks up a stone, no single person feels the full weight of what they're doing. The guilt just dissolves into the crowd. And this is so, so important. The lottery is not a story about a village of evil monsters. It's about the deep human fear of being alone. That need to belong, to not be the one person standing on the outside looking in, that can be way more powerful than a person's own moral compass. Okay, so let's go even deeper now. Let's get to what is maybe the most unsettling mechanism in the entire story, the social system that guarantees everybody complies, not through force, but with something way, way more powerful. And that's such a critical distinction. Nobody's holding a gun to anyone's head, right? But the social price of refusal, of being cast out, of becoming the weird one, of stepping outside the circle of the community, that cost is so huge that not participating isn't even a real choice. It's literally unthinkable. The great political theorist Hannah Arendt, who wrote so much about the nature of evil, she understood this perfectly. The second our identity and our safety are tied to being part of the group, the whole idea of free choice just becomes a fantasy. The fear of being an outcast can be stronger than the fear of doing something awful. And this is where we see the lottery's dark social function. It's not just meaningless violence. As the philosopher René Girard's theory explains, this is a classic scapegoat mechanism. It's a way for the community to take all its hidden fears and tensions, focus them all onto one unlucky person, and then purge them in a collective act. It restores a kind of fragile peace. So, where does all of this leave us? Well, this is the part where the story stops being about a fictional village and turns that mirror right back on us, forcing us to think about where we stand. When you finish reading The Lottery, after that initial shock wears off, most of us are left with one really obvious question. But Jackson is hinting that maybe we're asking the wrong thing. Our first instinct is, okay, how do we fix this? How do we be the hero who stops the ritual? We want a solution. But the thing is, the story isn't a puzzle we're supposed to solve. It's a diagnosis. And that is the haunting challenge Shirley Jackson leaves us with. The real question isn't about stopping this one made-up lottery. It's about whether we can develop the moral vision to see these patterns of blind tradition, of shared responsibility, of scapegoating in our own world, in our own lives, before they demand a price. Do we see the lottery for what it is while we're all still just chatting and laughing in the town square?